Yeah.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of From the Mechanics Bench. Really excited about my guest this week. I got a good friend of mine, Jesse, on the other end of this fantastic phone call. He owns DVO New Zealand, distributes DVO suspension, all over the place. He is also a very recognized mechanic, team manager on the EWS, BWR, whatever you want to call it, circuit. Has been working, with Ray Morrison for many years, among others. But yeah, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thank you for having me, mate. It's nice to chat to an old friend and use this platform for me and you to have a bit of a catch up and talk shit.
Totally. Yeah, I mean it's needed, right? Especially right now at the state of the industry. It's having a little bit of a talk shit is not a bad thing. So
Yeah. Oh.
to set the stage for everybody, just for you that may not know you, what's your history, quick synopsis? Jesse, in a nutshell, how'd you get started in riding? What brought you from, I'm presuming, a kid that didn't know how to ride to, doing what you're doing now?
Dude, I still don't think I'm really that good at riding, so I still don't know. Yeah, it's funny, like I haven't really had to have a think about it until you asked me to do this. And I never really started out riding at all. I was always like a track and field runner.
Yeah.
Ran cross country and rode and was like quite elite, like ran like 1440 5k and a 352 1500 and was pretty competitive. It's quick, man. Like I left school early to train full time. Left school at 15 to like pretty much like try and chase the dream. I didn't really quite make it, but then I think when I was about 19 or 20, I had a like really weird injury in my hip. Like I slipped while I was running and like hyperextended my hip. And for ages, like I couldn't lift my knee properly.
Yeah.
So I had to basically stop. The only thing I could do was ride a mountain bike or any bike.
Yeah.
And so I didn't take it up until I was maybe 20 years old. And I bought a charge cooker off Wiggle for like $900, the shittest bike.
Start at the top, yeah.
Yeah, just straight into it. And I just used it for training just to stay fit because I'd always planned on trying to stay at the elite level in running. And I just quickly found out that I kind of loved it. And I wouldn't really call it mountain biking, but I'd more like a lot of single track and like fire roads and it was basically like glorified gravel for me because I was so shit at bike handling. And I loved it. And then I entered a couple of random races. Like I did like there's like a duathlon where like there'll be a runner and then there's a rider.
Yeah.
And you'd be like a team. And so I would do the riding leg and stuff like that. And I'd like set course records on the mountain bike. And I was like, man, maybe this engine I've built years of running is like kind of handy. And then just quit running, just stopped.
Perfect.
And went to the road, like raced A grade and elite on the road and cyclocross and did like marathon XC and just spent from the ages of probably 20 through to like 26, 27, just doing what I was doing and running, but on the XC mountain bike and on the road. And I never really had any interest in these sorts of bloody things until pretty much I met my wife, Rowan.
Till recently, yeah.
Yeah. And it's been like...
Well, I guess not that recently now. It's been a while, but...
Yeah, I say recently. It's like, I think we've been together 9 years.
Yeah.
Married for 7. So like in my head, it's recent, but yeah, if you count it back, it's actually been a while.
And she was already like racing, right? When you guys met and...
Yeah. So when we met, I tried to sponsor her with a wheel company that I worked for at the time. I was the marketing guy for a brand that built wheels. And we met her there, and she had just signed with Lapierre, and that must have been in 2016.
Okay.
Yeah, she just signed with Lapierre. So she went overseas, and then it's when she came back that me and her ended up.
Yeah.
Is that the worst? That's the worst way of describing that, right?
Well, I mean, it means a lot of things. So, yeah.
But yeah, me and her became a couple, and went from there. But she was already fast as hell, and I was like super unco on a mountain bike, and she had to deal with that for a few years. So, and she still chose me. So,
and she still puts up with it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky, very, very lucky.
Yeah. Well, you work damn hard, on the other end of it as well, right? Like, even where I met you obviously was when I was lucky enough to come over and work the EWS circuit with We Are One a couple of years back, and you were obviously doing it with Raywin, and and just like it was my first glimpse into really how hard that type of work was under the time crunches and the planning and all like the other logistical stuff. And so it's like you've been putting in the time. I mean, she can wait for you for a while as long as the rest of the stuff all works out.
Yeah, like people ask me a lot. They're like, "Oh, how hard is it to be like a World Cup mechanic?" A World Cup mechanic. I can't even know what the fuck that means.
Yeah.
But it's like we're just bolting new shit on bikes and cleaning them. Like that's the easiest part of the job.
Yeah.
The hard shit is everything else, is for sure. And I think early on when I started out, I was like, "Oh, it's gonna be so sick. I'm gonna like fucking toolbox wars, and like I'm gonna be on pink." But it's like none of that matters.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Like, oh, you've got a foam insert cut out, like, bro. You take a real hard look and you get an ego check real quick and realize your job as a mechanic is like 10th in line of the things that are most important.
Totally.
Especially when you got a program like ours where it's
small
husband, wife, and I'm the support for everything. And it took me a couple of years to learn that. And it definitely hurt because I went into it thinking it was going to be all glory and going to be building these beautiful bikes and this and that, but realistically you're trying to fix shit with super glue and rangy things together to make them survive the next day.
Totally. Epoxy.
Not as glamorous as we originally thought, eh?
But it's interesting even there too, like you start realizing like it's just like riding. Like I see all these people now, it's like you're flicking your rear wheel, you're doing all these things, and it's because it was cool in videos, but it was cool in a video because it happened naturally from someone riding really fast and smashing a corner. It wasn't like a brake check to a grab. And it's the same thing with the foam inserts and the like toolkits. Like they started being cool because that was the most efficient way to like work well on stuff, not the other way around. It wasn't like build the cool toolkit first and then become good at like being a mechanic. It was like eventually people figured out like this was the best way. And then you start looking at everyone's setups and they're all so different for like just what works for them. And then you start realizing like just trust your own experience.
Mine is like like it's just everything's just piled in there.
Well, I mean, you got that upper flap, that's pretty good.
Yeah, but it's like, it's all just like random bits that like it's not pretty, but man, I have had that toolbox. That would be my 6th year on the same toolbox.
Yeah.
Haven't changed its configuration. It's been thrown around by TSA. It's had like a liter of oil dumped through it, and it's still just.
It's been through random security check after random security check.
Last year, I dropped it on the ground upside down and dumped everything in front of the entire like World Cup circuit, and just like all my shit spray along it. And I nearly cried. I haven't cried in a long time, but it broke me, man. And everyone was just like, all the other mechanics are all just like, bro, and I'm like,
yeah, that's hard. Yeah,
but it's functional. It works.
Yeah, it does. It does work.
Doesn't look cool on Instagram, but it's been getting the job done.
Yeah, it does look cool on Instagram is the fact that you're still part of a team traveling the world. You're selling Wicked and rebuilding and servicing Wicked suspension. You're part of an amazing part of a team that is kicking ass and has been and seems to still be doing it through this like turbulent couple of years. And like that part looks really good. So it was funny because that's what Gully said. I had him on a couple episodes ago, and I was like asking for his hot take, and he was like, "Why are they taking enduro away?" Like that was the big hot take for him, was like we decided to relabel all of mountain biking enduro for like 6 years, and then it's like, okay, never mind.
Yeah, man, that's a tough one. I listened to that podcast actually.
Oh, cool.
Out of interest, and it was. I still don't like, everyone says, "Oh, it's going, it's not, it's blah blah." Like, I still don't see it happening. Still don't see it leaving.
And you're more plugged in than we are. I think that's just been the perception with like you see the lot of budget cuts, right? You see a lot of riders without rides. On the dealer end, like as a local bike shop owner, you see all these people with massive amounts of inventory, like trying to pull back. And I mean, cutting cost is one thing. That's very different than something disappearing altogether. Having a low couple of years is a very different thing. But you still think it's been healthy and is going to continue to be healthy?
The racing is amazing.
It is. Yeah.
Still at the races, like the core group is still there. Everyone needs to still go as fast as they can. All the bikes still need to be developed as best as they can. everyone's there doing their job still. The
Yep.
only thing, like, I look at some of the footage and some of the feedback, and
Totally.
some of it's like granted, and some of it is like, stay in your lane, guys. Like, it's an oversized child's toy that kids are racing around the world for 6-figure salaries. Like,
Yep.
if shit hits the fan, it's probably going to be the first thing that goes. And it just, like, you can't get rid of XC, right? Because it's an Olympic year, it's an Olympic discipline.
Yep.
It's by far the most watched sport probably in the world out of all the disciplines. And then downhill is the elite premier.
You don't think road's got to smash XC? You don't think?
I would be interested in the numbers.
Yeah. If anyone knows the numbers, feel free to send me a link, comment on it. Let me know.
The road is boring.
I think so too. Yes.
Like, I was a roadie for years, and like, I loved racing, and I can watch a road race start to finish and be excited by it. Everyone else just wants a 5-minute package, whereas like, you can watch an Olympic distance XC race start to finish,
totally,
or like short track or any of that stuff. So I'd be interested to know. But I would say that, you know, those other disciplines are super strong, super powerful, get big viewership, and enduro doesn't at the moment because of whatever reason. They're struggling to broadcast it well. They're struggling to do a good job of it. Does that mean it's going away? I'd be surprised. But then if they turned around next year and said, hey, look, this is all done, we're finished, we're going to fire it up in a couple of years and try again, I also wouldn't be super surprised. So
I think, like, for me, the one thing that I thought was potentially behind it was like, they we really pushed enduro, it started exploding, and I think that there was potentially a lot of companies that looked at that and were like, okay, this is going to sell us so many enduro bikes, and then they realized they were just still selling the same mountain bikes that they had already like been selling, because that's the biggest segment of the regular riding population by far, right? You want to meet up with your friends, you want to pedal up the hill, then you want to ride down the hill. Like, it's so I just don't know if like then the bike sales necessarily supported like how quickly it grew. But does that mean it's going to go away? Like, I can't see it going, totally disappearing. People said that about downhill for years too, right? Oh, it's gone. Next year's its last year, and it's still, now it's seeing a resurgence again. So
yeah, I don't see it. There's too many people who love racing their bikes for a living, and there's too many people that are incredibly fast that want to compete against each other.
Yep.
That being said, in 8 months, 9 months time, gets to the end of the year, they could just shut it all, and I'll be completely wrong. Read back at this and be like, what an idiot.
Yeah, well, whatever. Then we'll just say, well, we didn't have a crystal ball. It was our best guess,
No, I'm not running the show. It's not my problem.
Yeah, no,
I would hate to be, though. Tell you that much.
If you could change one thing in terms of how it's packaged, what would you change? Like, at a broadcast level, like in terms of bringing it to the masses. We've been there now. Like, when you get to be there and you get to watch it. I mean, even when you're working, you don't get to see. Yeah. In some ways, I hate to say it was like my favorite part was when Johnny and Jacob were done, and it's like I could then go up and like watch like the pros come down. Like, it's incredible. It's like nothing else, right? So if we could find a way to get the viewer that, it would be.
Yeah. See, I'm in two minds, because I think if you made it more exciting for the viewer, you're going to be possibly killing what's best about the sport. And I think the old, like back in my day. Sort of 2017, 18, 19, when it was like days that people almost couldn't finish.
Totally. Yeah.
It was relentless. And for a spectator, horrific. You couldn't watch anything. There was like, they were fucking 30 kilometers in the middle of places you couldn't even pronounce.
Yeah. And
there was no coverage. Cell phone reception was patchy. The timing didn't work. But the racing was amazing. Like, and I would get to practice those days and go out and ride with them and see it all. And they were actually learning tracks for the first time, having to be self-sufficient. There was no team car with the mechanics and fucking water bottles at the bottom, like helping everyone out, getting them to the next stage for practice. It was like, you're gone for 7 hours, figure your shit out, see you back here. Good luck. Hope your GoPro's charged and your SD card's not full, and figure it out tomorrow because you're doing it again.
Yeah.
That was like the part of the sport that I thought was sick, and like, it's the, as I said, it's the type of mountain biking I started doing, going on big missions. And
well, it's interesting because you say that, and it's like, but I don't even know if it is horrible for the right viewership. And I think that's the thing that you're alluding to, like that core group of people. Like at that time, I couldn't watch coverage of it at all, but you could tune in every day to get a race report, to see what happened. You're reading, but people were like waiting to see what had happened on these big days, right? Like the interest was still there. So maybe that is part of it, is bringing the storylines of like what racing has in it.
Yeah.
You know,
and they used to send like fucking Rick McLaughlin out with the bloody dad cam and shaky, terrible footage, the camera and Jack Moyer's face, and you'd get like gold. You'd get, and it was incredible. It was like the most real reaction to some dude who's just dropped in, finished the stage, had a shit run, telling you exactly what it is, and it was up within hours. And it didn't need to be this polished package with a banner ads and like all this cool shit going on, and it was way better.
Yeah, I think so too,
personally. But now it's owned by the people that make fucking Batman. And you're going up against that. So yeah, I don't have the answer. I think the format they're currently running in it with like single day bike parky repeat sort of areas where it's easy to film, it's easy to get the media crews and photogs in place for content, and maybe they have to do that, but I think it's made the racing shit. It's not I have no interest in like the sport as a spectator. I'm like, whatever, like it is what it is. I'm still impressed by results and impressed by performances, but yeah, I don't look at it the way I used to look at it.
The flavor isn't quite the same anymore.
Yeah, and I think like you look at just the way the athletes train now, like it needs to be completely different. The types of bike they need, 17, 18 kg coil sprung, fucking push cord, downhill casing, 38 mil 180 travel, and it's like, well, yeah, that's like 1% maybe, but then it's like back when we started, it was 140, 150 bikes. They were 30, 14 kilo. They were the bike that people would buy and ride most often. So to see even just that switch, it's like, like the sport's.
It's more like 5 mini downhill races in a day now than potentially what enduro, was or could be.
They still throw a couple like filthy 2,000 meter days in there, which is like finale.
Unreal.
Just races like that just keep the flame alive, I think, for a lot of riders. And you watch others really struggle, and you watch riders, especially ones that started out with that early style of racing, like Rowan. You watch them start to succeed, and it's I don't know. I think for me, it's a lot cooler. But man, it's a multi-million-dollar thing now that two mechanics sitting in their workshops don't really get much for saying. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, if only they'd put us in charge. Discovery or whatever. If you're listening, if you're taking job applications,
there'd be a lot of beers and a lot of sushi and not a lot done, I don't think.
that is true. Yeah, the package would be even worse.
Yeah, it'd be funny though. Be laugh.
It would be funny. That is for sure. There'd be always a good after party, kind of no matter what happened. Would be good. So next year though, you guys are obviously still going back to the show, racing again, because Ray's still got another year on contract, right? And
well, a lot of people don't know this, but she was meant to retire 2 years ago. And well, not meant to, but
I remember you talking about that though. Yep.
We accepted it 2 years ago. Like, this is it. Like, we're good. We thought she had sort of reached the pinnacle of her, like everything had been exhausted, and she had done as much she could as in the sport, and we were happy with what she had achieved. She'd done 5 years inside the top 10, and she had done awesome, and she was super happy with it. And then she just had a couple of stages late into that 2021 year.
The year that I was there with you guys. Yeah.
And she just threw down a couple blinders, and we just saw something. And then we sat down with Liv and Whistler, and they talked about helping develop a new bike, and Ray's eyes just sort of lit up. And we had gone into that meeting with Liv. I mean, they've probably never heard this, but I doubt they'll listen.
Don't worry, that 88 viewers are probably not Live Cycling.
Got into that meeting sort of expecting to explain to them that, hey, look, like, we're going to sort of look to wrap this thing up. And they never let us even have the chance to say anything. But Ray and I, like, we know each other super well. They said a couple of key things about the bike and the platform we were going to be able to use, and the testing, the development of it. And we sort of both glanced at each other and were like, we can't call it with this new bike coming. And then the new bike came, and she had her best ever year. So which was last year, 2023. Finished 8th overall in the world. And
you guys are on a super cool program too, because you guys are mostly able to pick your parts packages for the most part, right? Like, you've developed a program that isn't.
No one fucking gets to tell us shit,
which is awesome. Because
we
you
get to
hear
run
that all
the
the time, right? People that feel like they're trapped in this, like I've got this contract, but then, and you see it like, one of the things, like them or not, YT was always so famous for, right? It was there, okay, I'm going to bring people on and I'm going to let them run whatever they want. Like, we're not going to, and that's incredible. Like, how did that come about? Because I'm sure there was pressure at some point to be like, get on board with the team. This is what we're riding, kind of thing.
It's funny. I don't know how much of the story I can tell, but so 2017, Ray was on a factory team.
Yep.
And they had a meeting with her in Whistler about the following year and blah, blah, blah. And Ray had a lot of problems with some of the components that the team chose. And they just didn't suit her. And it just like, they had used it to get sponsorship money and run the team. And, that paid for whatever and blah, blah, blah. But it just didn't fit with her. And we blacked out some components and duct taped over some stuff and electrical logos, and and they weren't super happy with it, along with like a couple of other things, like me being really involved with her racing, and her mechanic would be having a hard time with her bike or setting it up, or she'd be having a hard time in a race, and I would turn up. I was working for the Ibis team at the time, and I'd turn up and be like, give me the bike, take it, set it up the way we had worked on in the off season, and sort of treaded on their toes a little bit. And we butted heads a little bit with them, and then I would do things to her bike that I wasn't technically allowed to do. And when it sat down for the contract renewal meeting, they brought all this stuff up, and Ray was super hungover, so she didn't give a fuck. And it didn't really say anything. And then she left the meeting and she came back and was just like, nah, this is not it. Like, and we got pretty much straight on the phone, because she was on a factory team, and Liv were paying to have her on that team. The global marketing manager, Brooke, at the time, she was funding the whole thing to have Ray there. And we were just like, hey, can we just have that budget and just set this up ourselves? And it was awesome, because we got to go through and just handpick what we actually wanted to run. We got to test a bunch of stuff, try out and figure out what was best for Raywin, because the demands of a 60 kg chick are very different to that of a 85, 90 kg male who's going faster and putting more force through stuff. So it was awesome, and we got to pick exactly what we wanted, which created this really happy, authentic sort of race package that Ray could actually endorse, because it was the stuff she actually loved, rather than shoved down her throat by some marketing manager who took some budget money out of some other company. So really, really stoked on being able to
which is awesome. I think you're right. I think it does give you a better package. It gives you a better like race performance package, but it's also like, you end up with happy people. You end up with people that can truly like stand behind the product, because they're not forced to do it. When did you get involved with DVO, and how did that tie in? Because you now run all the distribution for New Zealand. Where else are you guys distributing now?
Yeah, we sell into some other countries, because we sometimes the only place has stock.
Great markets and things.
But I mean, it sort of happened again based on she was on that factory team, and that factory team signed with DVO.
Okay.
And they flew her to Sedona for some testing camp, and like the athletes didn't do shit. Like they didn't even they played with some stuff and rode some stuff, but it was all based around the mechanics and the OEM deal that they were trying to tune for. And DVO had tried to have a really good relationship with individual riders, but the team was sort of trying to get in the middle of that and sort of control a few things.
So
Raywin came home with DVO suspension, and I'd never touched it before. I didn't know anything about it. So I sort of did what I do and sort of reached out to a bunch of people, and the distribution in the country was sort of bouncing around at the time between people, and it was all a bit messy. And it then came out OEM on giant bikes, which are huge sellers in New Zealand. And that frame was like, and shock was like not quite compatible, and they didn't test stuff properly, and pretty much every single shock failed. There were a lot sold in New Zealand. And that same Whistler trip that Raywin was hungover in that meeting, I sat down with DVO, and we knew obviously what had happened, and we knew we were moving forward with our own program. And I'd had a couple of beers with Bryson and the boys in the car park somewhere. And one of them just like, oh, you want to be the New Zealand distributor? And I was like, yeah, fucking have a crack. No idea what I got myself into. And we got back, and I woke up the next morning, and looked over at Ray and I was like, I think I like
Signed
agreed to be
up.
the distributor of DVO. And went back to the boys in the morning and was like, hey, like, is this a thing?
Yeah.
JP, who basically keeps all those boys on the straight and narrow, was like, yeah, well, I'll send you the paperwork, I'll send you all the files, everything you're going to need. Let's get the ball rolling. So basically, once I got home, I had boxes and boxes of shocks turn up from Giant that needed repairing, and I wasn't like a great suspension technician. I fiddled with like raised shocks and forks and that stuff and serviced it, but never on mass scale. And a lot of the stuff needed like suspension, like sort of engineering level changes,
right?
That I don't know how to do.
Yeah.
I took a lot of their lead on that and just rebuilt hundreds and hundreds of shocks and forks.
I would jumping in the deep end.
Yeah, and I was we were flatting at the time. I like rented the mate's garage, like cleared some stuff out of his garage, built a really archaic looking bench, and was hand bleeding stuff with super old shitty oil, and there was dust everywhere, and it was a mess. But at the time, it needed someone who was just willing to pick up the phone, speak to a customer, accept that something had shat the bed, find a solution for them, fix it quickly, apologize, get it back to them. And it needed to be done with literally hundreds of shocks. So that person happened to be me, and we did such a good job of dealing with that every single one of those people that had a problem and blew something up and had something go wrong have now come back to buy $2,100 Onyx 38s and brand new Gen 3 Topazes and Jade X's, and that's our customer base, man. And so shitty as it was, and as much as I hated it, it was probably the best thing that could have happened in terms of it just accelerated our exposure, and then it gave me the opportunity to showcase what good customer service could look like in New Zealand. And that's why we wiped the floor with the other big brands, is they just couldn't do that.
And I mean, just in general, the customer service thing is a piece that, we've talked about a lot, right? Like a lot of companies are garbage at it. A lot of companies want to pass the buck on warranties, and it's blaming this and it's blaming that. And it's like, it seems like it's like the last thing they want to do is get the thing fixed and get to you. And we've all dealt with that. So it's like when you do, you had pointed me in the direction of that Facebook page of like, DDO owners and fans or whatever it was. And it's true. You look at the feedback on there, you look at the people that are using it. Everything has problems. So it's not that there's not one person on there that has an issue, because every product under the sun has issues, but the way it's dealt with generally, and the opinions of the people on there, I think speak a lot and speak pretty highly, which is rad. So, and now you've tied those into distributing Deviate as well.
He's bloody
right? Which I was just lucky enough to ride for a season, and I love my Claymore. It was awesome.
Yeah, we again, it was a pretty similar situation where they sort of had a distributor in New Zealand that was just sort of selling stuff to his mates at cost. They wanted a more legitimate setup, and they'd heard about me, I'd heard about them. I put my hand up, and I think we had one conversation. And they were like, you wanna do it? And I was like, yeah. I was
Sweet.
like, but like I laid it out to them pretty clear. I was like, this is how I operate. And I run a pretty fast, loose program. Customer comes first, in the sense that like we make them happy, and then we deal with anything else like outside of it that needs to be washed up in paperwork, warranty, or fucking whatever. And they're awesome. Like they're like Chris and Ben have been amazing to deal with. They get it. They're riders. They don't have they don't have millions of dollars owing to shareholders that get a say in anything. They just get to do it. So it's been cool. To work with them. It's very, very reminiscent of DVO. So it makes it really easy for me.
And so you distributing them like now kind of OE with DVO, or are you still like doing frame onlys, or are you trying to get it there, or what's the story in that? Or is it just an option?
It's always, I think I've sold, I think it was 41 frames or 41 bikes in the last year, and every single one bar one has had DVO fork and shock.
Crazy.
So like bit of a fucking Trojan horse, like but like, my goal is like that the Deviate guys back in Scotland, that would be awesome if they stock DVO. And they've been working a little bit with DVO to get some product on bikes, but like those guys are never going to lock in like OEM dealer contracts and exclusivity. It's going to be whatever the customer wants. Like if you want to run,
awesome.
you're on Olin's or Cane Creek or Deviate, like all power to you. Run what you're running with it.
Yeah, I mean, like I just had a Cane Creek shock on my Claymore, and it was incredible. Once I figured out some issues on it. It was actually probably the best shock I've ever ridden, but it came a little bit too long for the bike, or a little bit, sorry, too short for the bike. It was kind of topping out a little bit. And originally I was able to fix it by changing the rebound tune, like way heavy on the far end of it. But, you know, but then once I figured it out, it was good. But it's nice to have people that are working with the bikes and also doing what you're doing with the shock, like in-house, to just know that it's going to work and it's there. And I wish more brands would just kind of take that approach from the starting point.
I think it's hard because we're so small that if you pick up the phone and you ring me, I have the time to answer you. And like, you know, Matt from Scotland, he rang me messaged me the other day. He's like, hey, I got a customer that got this, they want to do this, it's doing this, and I can message him back within a minute and reply to him and be, right, you need to run this much PSI, rebound, bladder, set it up like this, and can get back to him straight away. There's just no way Fox or RockShox can achieve.
But you also know what to suggest. It's not even just the getting back; it's that you've also had the time with the product in the, you know what I mean, and you know what you're talking about. Because that's the other thing. It's like if it was as easy as that, then all of RockShox and Fox's suspension tuning guides on their website would solve the problems. You know what I mean? But they don't, because they're not for individual weird one-off scenarios, and they're trying to hit the biggest margin of riders they can with one product or two tunes or whatever it is, right? To, you know, so it's pretty cool to see it this way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small market that want it the way that we probably do it, but big enough for us, man, and it gives me a job, and it's insanely satisfying. And I love it, and
it's incredible to watch it grow. You know,
thank you. It's sometimes you look back and you're like, oh yeah, and then sometimes you're so like blinded by what you're trying to achieve that you forget how far you've come. So
totally.
No, it's definitely cool.
Well, so as crazy as it sounds, we're already down to our last 7 minutes. If we only do one, we can do a part 2 if you really want to, because this has actually been a lot of fun. I haven't even brushed on what I wanted to really talk about with you yet. But I know we also wanted to talk about We Are One. Obviously, I was over there racing with that team, and they were getting their rival. They just announced today their downhill team, actually their World Cup team, which is pretty cool. Mark Wallace. And then Moselle, which is really rad, because he actually just came up on a podcast that I had with Baker, my buddy in the first one, because he used to coach him in North Van, Moselle, when he was a little kid, both Drew and John. So you guys have been running their wheels for quite a while now.
4 years? Yeah, 4 years.
And you're going to run that program again next year? And
so there was a possibility of a budget cut there this year. And Ray and I sat down and talked about it, and we were like, I would rather run their wheels with no money than run anyone else's wheels with money.
Yeah, sweet.
And that's an honest, genuine conversation that Ray and I have together. It's like, hey, look, this is how much they pay. This is how good the product is. Like, man, we've had 3 years in a row where she's ridden the exact same wheel set for the whole season and never broken a rim.
Yeah, which is so crazy. Yeah.
And she's light and blah blah whatever. But like, you show me, I think I know of like 2 maybe other people that have done that on the world circuit. But 3 years in a row, and like, why would I ever move her off that?
Totally.
It makes so much sense. And the compliance of the new convergence rims obviously got better, and then they still didn't break. And I mean, I still have them on, on my bike. Obviously, I still through the shop and stuff get them at a good price. But they're still a product that I pay for, now, because I just think the value is there in them. I'm really excited to see what the new downhill bike's going to do for them. I've been lucky enough to kind of ride on some of that prototyping phase as well, and it's a cool looking rig, and that'll be released. It's sweet to see. I always wonder if I'm looking at it with like rose-colored glasses, just because I love the company so much, and I love the people behind it and the story. And then I see other people that like aren't as involved as like we are with the company, just absolutely losing their minds. And I'm like, oh yeah, maybe this is justified. That's it. Yeah,
there's a pretty strong following, that's for damn sure. Behind them, but
and it's because they do what riders want, and they, like Dustin and the team, listen and develop products that riders are looking for, and sort of follow that direction, rather than following the direction of $1 million shareholders being like, we need to sell more units, go to Taiwan to manufacture. I mean, I think the product at the end of the day, like, it just speaks for itself, and there's very few companies like that, like, where no matter
you know what, even if the company itself is doing something different or driven in a different direction, like the product is just so good.
Yeah.
Then it's like, even if you remove everything else, it's like you want to go fast, you want to have a durable product, you want to have a warranty, like it ticks all those boxes, right? And it's like, I think there's a lot of people that, you're right, don't know the story, don't know anything about the company, don't know necessarily anything about the owner, but it's like it just ticks everything. So it's like, even if that backstory isn't there, it still works. It's still an option that's incredible.
Well, I think even Dustin admitted they'd done a pretty shit job of like showcasing some of that story. And even like for me, like we'd ridden for them for 2 years, and we came and visited when we came to see you in Kamloops.
Yep.
And I went and saw the factory for the first time. And I was like, I hope Dustin doesn't listen to this. I was still like a little bit skeptical, being like, nah, they can't all be made in Canada. There's no fucking way. Like, it's not possible.
Yeah.
I went there and visited it, and like I was like,
it's cool.
Yeah, the parts are made here. Like the parts to make the parts are made here.
Yeah.
And like everyone's a person, and they're all like waving and saying hello, and they're all stoked, and like you all sit around and have like a group lunch together, and like I was like, damn, this is like, and I said to Dustin, I was like, you need to do a better job of like showing people how sick this is.
Yeah.
And like, I look at it, look at their Instagram and their social media stuff, and in the last year and a half,
it's come a long way.
They've done an amazing job of showcasing like the personal touch to, you have a couple of ladies in a room that are just laying up some of the best carbon rims in the world, and they're just away laying the rims, going and cooking them, cooling them down, guys sitting there drilling them. And
it's a pretty cool process. I mean, I think I was like the 9th employee at We Are One. And like to see it grow and scale, because I was there through 2 moves of factories, like from the very first place to second to 3. And it has been pretty cool to see where that's come from, and to watch it grow. And there's been a lot of personnel changes there over the last couple of years for a bunch of various reasons. But overall, I think like that's the cool thing too, is they've managed to figure out a recipe where the product hasn't suffered, like when people have like moved on with their careers or done different things or whatever, which is pretty neat. So but yeah, I mean, so we've got 2 minutes left, even though the whole thing, like you said, has kind of been a hot take. Don't think I asked you one question that I had written down for you, but give me your hot take right now. The one that's been, I know you got one sitting on your chest that you just got to get rid of.
I had one, and it was going to be that I don't rate enduro as a sport, but I do. But the way I would explain it was a bit weird. But the hot take I do have, and it pisses a lot of people off, is that e-bikes are better than normal bikes in every fucking way.
Better? Oh, interesting. That is a hot take.
There is not a single reason that a normal bike is better than an e-bike.
Well, I'm going to need more than 1:30.
Yeah, if someone's going right now to buy a bike and you're not buying an e-bike, what are you up to?
Interesting, man. That's an interesting take.
Yeah. And I wholeheartedly, genuinely believe that there is like, and this is coming from someone who's like, fitness is their passion.
Totally, yeah.
Like roadie, like I got power meters on my bike, so I like shave my legs half the time. And I genuinely like, you put an e-bike in front of me, done.
Is it just like, that it's more, in your mind, it's just more fun?
It's way more fun. You get more bang for buck. The riding is better. They've got better grip. Everything is just the dream.
Well, that is a hot take.
These guys have one coming, and the second it turns up, I'm out.
You're done. Game over. Yeah. You're gonna join the EWR series or whatever it is.
I don't necessarily agree with them racing, but that's a whole other topic. But
that's a whole other hot take.
The e-bike itself is a platform. That's where it's at, man.
I mean, it's going that way, I think, in some ways, whether you like it or not, but
I'm gonna get crucified, but
no, I don't think so. I think it's a valid hot take, man. I think we're gonna have to probably do a second episode in the next couple weeks here. I would love to if you're down with it. But before we just get cut off, I do want to say thank you for just coming on at all. It was just great to catch up with you. I miss you a lot. You taught me a lot when we were over there racing. There's very few people in my life that have taught me as much as you did in that couple months, just what that whole situation looked like. So that was rad. Thank you for that. I would also love to have